Were you told to feed your baby every 2 to 3 hours? Were you unsure about whether or not this was from the start of the feeding to the start of the next feeding, from the end of one feeding to the end of another feeding? Did your baby seem hungrier than that amount of time or sleepier and was hard to arouse for feedings? Today, we're going to talk all about understanding when you should feed your baby and why the most common advice given is something I try to debunk all the time. My name is Lo Nigrosh. I'm an international board certified lactation consultant and host of this podcast, The Milk Making Minutes. I'm on a mission to help breastfeeding parents feel better about feeding their babies and to understand when to reach out for help. So, you have read the breastfeeding books, you attended a breastfeeding class, or you asked your friends about what feeding their baby was like, and you get told by those in the hospital and by your OBGYN and perhaps a pediatrician, if you meet them before your baby comes, that you will feed your baby every 2 to 3 hours for 10 to 15 minutes on each side. I'm going to tell you right now that your baby's feeding patterns may vary vastly from this. And here's why. That advice is based on averages. So in the studies that have been done on how frequently breastfed babies eat and how long they nurse, the average is that they feed every 2 to 3 hours for 10 to 15 minutes on each side. But the thing I say to my clients all the time is your baby is not an average. Your baby is an individual. So we don't know how frequently your baby will want to feed. We don't know how long they will feed. And it might vary from the days that they're a newborn till when they are 6 weeks old until they are 12 weeks old. And it might be different again when they are 6 months old. So if your baby is not an average, and if you want to make sure you're feeding your baby frequently enough, what should you do? What should you go by to know when to feed your baby? The key to this, the answer to this, is in getting to know your little baby. Starting to understand your baby's hunger cues, having somebody hold the baby in their arms as frequently as possible, being skin to skin with that baby as frequently as possible, even when they're sleeping. Now, of course, we all need to rest, and there are times when you do need to put the baby down, but often what I see is that babies will be wrapped up like little baby burritos in the swaddle that will keep them from startling themselves awake. It also keeps them from being able to show some of their hunger cues. So if they're always swaddled and they're always laying down flat on their back, then it makes it harder for you to identify the baby's earliest hunger cues. And then when they start to cry, that is a late hunger cue. And so they may fuss more at the breast. They may have a harder time latching. You may be really confused about why they're not eating if they are so hungry. And it's because they have gotten to a hangry point and they are disorganized and they do not have the patience or the energy to attempt latching in a way that optimizes milk transfer. And so watching your baby, holding your baby constantly will allow you to watch for their hunger cues. Do they start to move their eyes around and you see that underneath their closed eyelids? Do their eyes start to flutter? Do they make little squeaky sounds? Do they start to smack their lips? Do they start to bring their little hand to their mouth? All of these are early hunger cues. And when you see these things, if you bring your baby to the breast, they more than likely will be able to latch, be able to get organized, and come onto the breast without feeling super duper hungry. And your baby might show these cues every hour. Your baby might show these cues every 2 hours. Your baby might show these cues an hour after you have fed, and then 3 hours later again. It might vary. So the most important thing to do is to pay attention to your baby and to your breasts instead of to the clock. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this. One, if your baby is sleeping longer than 3 hour stretches, then you definitely want to wake your newborn in order to ensure they feed frequently enough and are getting enough calories throughout the day. Because some babies, if they aren't getting enough, they will kind of shut down and they will begin sleeping very long stretches to preserve calories. And so a baby who has not surpassed their birth weight, who is still in the first couple of weeks of life, will sleep way longer stretches than what would be ordinary in order to preserve those calories. So you definitely want to be waking babies that are not feeding every 2 to 3 hours. The second exception is the baby who wants to nurse all day long, no matter what time of day it is, and you know that they are transferring milk because they're gaining plenty of weight. They have plenty of pees and poops. You maybe have done a weighted feed with an IBCLC and you know that they are transferring an expected amount of milk, yet all they want to do is nurse all day long. Now, if you don't mind and you want to bring them to the breast or chest that frequently, there's nothing wrong with doing that. But if you're feeling exhausted, if you're tired, if you need a break, and you know that their hunger has been satiated, they were relaxed, they fell asleep at the breast, their body wasn't tense, yet the minute you bring them off the breast, they just want to suck again, and you heard sucks and swallows, then you could offer something else to suck on, like a finger or a pacifier, to satiate that suck reflex that they have when they are a baby that constantly wants to suck. The caveat I give there is to ensure that you understand your baby's hunger cues and that you are not offering the pacifier in place of a feeding because you think they're feeding too frequently if it's more than every 2 to 3 hours. On average, the breastfed baby feeds between 8 at the very low end and 12 times a day. So if you do the math, if there are 24 hours in a day and the baby is feeding 12 or 13 times a day, that is every 2 hours or even more frequently than that. So the best way to know how many times to feed your baby is to pay attention to the cues your baby is giving you and to your breasts. Do your breasts feel less full after your baby has nursed? Do you see signs of milk transfer when your baby has nursed? Are you hearing a swallow for every 2 to 3 sucks? These are the ways that you know that baby is getting enough, and then you're going to focus on feeding the baby when they show their cues and not worrying about the time. If you have any further questions about your individual baby and your individual body, please reach out. I would love to be the person who helps you understand your baby and your body better and who works with you as a team to come up with a plan that makes the most sense for your family. So go to my website, www.quabmemberservices.com. You can book online right away. It'll send you my forms, and I can work with you virtually from all over the world or in person here in Massachusetts. I can't wait to see you soon. Bye.